Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and in my opinion, the belt loop on pants is the unsung hero. The belt loop is a very important part of your jeans. If they don't fit right, you need to wear a belt. If not, they will sag and they will rip in places you don't want them to rip. But in order for a belt to work, you really need the belt loops to work. And this is why often your belt loops will rip, because they do take a lot of stress when you wear your jeans. However, there is a way that you can fix this. Even though you have a hole here and there's no fabric there, there is a way that it can be fixed. So let's establish what we're going to need to fix this hole. We're going to need thread, a machine, seam ripper, and a little piece of fabric. Let's start with the fabric. If you're able to get a piece of denim, that really is the ideal thing to use. If not, you need a heavier type of fabric. If you're going to use a light fabric like cotton, double up on it, just so that you'll have something a little bit stronger. But I do have an extra piece of denim. As a matter of fact, it's not a bad match, so this is the fabric that I'm going to use. The next thing you're going to use is a thread that's going to blend into the color of your jeans. Gray seems to be a very good color for this if you don't have another color. Start with gray, a light gray to a charcoal gray. And if you have a black pair of pants, a dark charcoal will work well with that. So let's start first by establishing what we need to do to put the material back to where we have the hole. So here we have the hole, and you can see this is where the belt loop was actually sewn on. So we need to put fabric back to where that hole is. What we need to do is trim off all of the frayed fabric. So now all of the frayed edges have been trimmed off. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece of fabric and we're going to put it to the inside. You just have to make sure it's big enough to cover the whole hole plus a little bit on the outside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to thread baste this on, and the basting will come off. So there the patch has just been basted on, and you can see the hole now looks like it's filled in. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the machine and we're going to weave fabric back and forth to actually cover this hole so it does not fray anymore, and we're going to make this patch become part of the jeans. The first thing we're going to want to do is sew here, which would be underneath the belt loop. And that's going to secure the fabric from behind up into this area, because as you can see, we have nothing to sew on here. So we need this patch to come into this direction. So just sew in this direction here. I just want to go back and forth a couple of times so that the back fabric will actually stay onto this front. Now, a lot of times when you're sewing denim and heavy fabrics, you have this problem where you have a lot of extra height here. So your foot is actually on an angle, not straight. And when it's not straight, it has a problem getting over that hump. So here's a way to solve that problem. Put your needle in the fabric, then lift up the presser foot. A nice nail file will do the job for you. What you're going to need to do is keep that straight. With the needle down, put that right up against that edge. Now what that does is it keeps your sewing foot straight, so it's not trying to go over that hump. It's actually sewing in an even position. Put your foot down and you can start sewing. Now every time you come to this hump, you might need to do this. And after a while you will find it's very, very easy to do. You're not going to sew over it because the needle has already passed this point. And it will be very easy to sew. You will find it easier to sew than without. Now the next stage is we're going to sew that line from the right side. Keep your belt loop out of the way, put your needle down, and you are going to sew right over top of that stitching line. Now we're going to sew this patch. Keep as close as you can to this waistband and start sewing. Just go back and forth, moving the fabric slightly over. You see the stitching back and forth? Now you're going to repeat it, and you're going to do the stitching in this direction. Just go back and forth, and as you go, move over slightly. So continue to do this back and forth in both directions until that entire hole is covered. Now you can see I have done the stitching here. One line along that top stitching, and then I have the threads going in that direction and the threads going in that direction. And that will cover that entire raw edge. So you have now made a very strong fabric that this belt loop will be able to sew onto. But we need to trim the back off now. So we've taken out the basting and we've trimmed all the way around, fairly close to the stitching. You don't have to get too close. Now for the belt loop. You see this stitching here? That will need to come out because your machine will not be able to stitch over all of that. You might have fabric still left over that ripped off of the back of the pant. Make sure it's free of thread and fabric on both sides. Fold it right on the original line, and then you will be able to stitch right here where the original stitching was, and you will be stitching it right onto this new fabric. So now I have the machine set at a very tiny zigzag because I'm going to stitch right there where the original threads were that you took out. Now I've changed my top thread to a gold because that's what the thread was. So in order to do that, put your foot down, and again, it is going to want, this foot is not going to be nice and straight because it has this bulk to get over. So you need to keep that foot nice and straight by using something to raise it. Like I said, this nail file works great. Needle in the fabric, foot up, put the nail file up to the needle, put your foot down, and now slowly do the zigzag right off of this. And that really is all there is to it. You see the little bar tack there? It matches the other bar tacks. It is sewn right on your new patch, and you have a perfectly good new loop. And that fabric will probably outlive the rest of your pants. Really? That's as simple as it is. You're putting your patch on and then you're going to sew back your loop. The key thing to remember is the foot on your machine. The machines do not like to sew when the foot is on an angle because it's fighting against this tiny little wedge. Keeping your foot at a straight level will make your sewing so much easier. And I really find these padded nail files really work. But you can use anything that's just going to make that foot go from the wedge up straight. Try to use the same color thread or something that will blend in, and a denim needle, and you're all set to go. Thank you for joining me today. Feel free to subscribe, and I'm so glad you could join me. Join me again, and we'll see next time what we're sewing in the sewing room. Bye for now.